hi-fi equipment and stuff, endless stuff, and they litter the earth with rubbish. So think of a dolphin. He isn't really a fish because a dolphin's a mammal, but a dolphin's point of view towards the human race. Dolphins spend most of their time playing. They don't work because the grocery is right there in the ocean, whatever they need. And so a dolphin will catch up with a seagoing liner, and it'll get on the wake of the liner and put its tail at an exact angle of 26 degrees. And in so doing, the liner will carry the dolphin along. The dolphin will make circles around the liner just for fun, playing all its life in the water. And we know that a dolphin's brain is as big, if not bigger than ours, that it's incredibly intelligent, that it has a language which we can't decipher. And the person who knows most about dolphins in the United States, Dr. John Lilly, is a friend of mine, and he said he came to the conclusion that dolphins were too smart to tell us their language. So he abandoned this project. He said he would no longer keep such a highly civilized being in the concentration camp of a zoo, and that it should go back to the ocean. So the point is, though, that not only dolphins, but every organism that has any sensitivity in it whatsoever considers itself to be the center of the universe. Now, it has its problems. There's a Zen poem which says, "The morning glory which blooms for an hour differs not at heart from a giant pine that lives for 1,000 years." In other words, an hour is a long life to a morning glory. 1,000 years is a long life to a pine. And our 80 years and 10, or as the insurance company's actuarial tables put it, somewhere between 65 and 70 years as an average human life, seems about the right length of life. I mean, there are people who want to go on and are in quest of immortality and have their bodies frozen in case there should develop in the future some technique by which they could be revived. But I really don't go for that idea, because nature has mercifully arranged the principle of forgettery as well as the principle of memory. If you always and always and always remembered everything, you see, you would be like a piece of paper which had been painted over and painted over and painted over until there was no space left and you wouldn't be able to distinguish between one thing and another. It's like when a whole bunch of people start to scream and make noises and out-scream each other, and soon you can hear nobody. So in that way one's memories become screams, and nature mercifully arranges that the whole thing be erased, and you begin again. You see, it doesn't matter in what form you begin, whether you begin again as a human being, or as a fruit fly, a butterfly, or a beetle, or a bird. It feels the same way that you feel now. So we're really all in the same place. And we all have above us things much higher than ourselves. And we all have below us things that we feel are much lower than ourselves, just as there are things out there on the left and things out there on the right, and things in front and things behind. Because you're the middle. You're the middle everywhere, always. Now my third fantasy. Nobody has, it seems to me, really seriously asked the question, how do stars begin? Why? How out of space do these enormous radioactive centers arise? Well, I'm going to solve this problem on the principle of the egg and the hen, because it is said a chicken is one egg's way of becoming other eggs. And if you've understood my second fantasy, you will see how that could be true. Now let's suppose then that a planet is one star's way of becoming another star. You know, stars, when they explode, they send a lot of goo out into space. And some of this goo solidifies into balls which get in orbit and spin round the star. And in one chance in 1,000 maybe, one of those balls will become like the planet Earth, and slowly upon it will arise what some people might call a disease called the bacteria of intelligent life. And they have a notion, these things that we call alive, that they ought to go on. They, you know, have a fixed idea in their heads that they should keep on doing whatever it is they're doing, and they should always be doing it better. So they divide themselves into different species, and these species compete with each other in order to, as it were, flex their muscles and get better and better at whatever it is they are. And they go on doing this until one species really establishes itself as top species in the particular area on the particular planet, as we human beings, Homo sapiens, have established ourselves as top species on Earth, whatever top means. Well then, when we have a little leisure and don't have to spend all our time finding food to put into our mouths, we start asking questions. And we look around at each other and everything and say, what is this? I mean, what's going on here? Well, some people say, that's a stupid question to ask. Why don't you just go on doing your work? Go hunting, go farming, go doing your business. They say, no, there are higher things. And so they create a special class of people who are in India called Brahmins, among us, philosophers, scientists, theologians, thinkers. And they go into this question, and they're allowed to stop farming, to stop hunting, to stop mining, to stop scrubbing floors, and to go to very special places called universities, where they can sit around and think about what is going on. Well, they think about this. First of all, they do what they call philosophy, which is they try to say what it means, what does the word be? What does the word exist mean? What do we mean when we say we're here? Well, they find they can't discuss that very far, because the word stops meaning anything. It sort of becomes a noise. They say, no, we're not really getting to the point. What we've got to do is, instead of thinking all the time and just theorizing and talking words about what's going on, we've got to investigate it experimentally. We've somehow got to look into this stuff that we call reality, a material world, and find out what it is. So they start chopping it up. See? They go into flowers and they chop up the seeds and they look into the middle of the seeds. They find something there and then they have to get a magnifying glass and look in on that and get smaller and smaller and smaller. And they reason they must eventually come to some particle called an atom. In Greek, atom means atomos, non-cuttable, what you can't split any further. So they come down to the atomos, that than which there is no whicher, they thought. But then they found they could split that atom. They could find the electron, the positron, the meson, etc., 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 forever. And so they said, well, this is a real science, because we've now found out that every atomos of matter contains immense energy, and that we could come to the point where we could release the energy in the atom. And the trouble with intellectual people is that anything that can be done must be done. And so eventually, in the necessary course of the development of nature, they found out how to blow the earth to pieces and turn it into a star. So that may be, you see, how stars originate. They have planets, like chickens have eggs, and the eggs burst and turn into chickens. And planets burst through the agency of intelligent life and turn into stars, which throw out other mud balls, which some of which stand a reasonable chance, about as reasonable a chance as, say, any male spermatozoon stands when it enters the female womb of becoming a baby. 1 in a million. And those spermatozoa are in exactly the same position as the planets and the stars. Now, I tell you, this is a fantasy. But you may ask me, isn't it a rather unpleasant fantasy? Aren't things going the wrong way, the wrong direction? In other words, if the whole point of life, I mean, this tender biological substance with all its tubes and filaments and nerves, which is so very sensitive, if all this is to end up in fire, into an absolute blaze of light, don't we say, oh, what a shame? Is that the way it ends? But so many people say that they want to see the light. They want to be enlightened. They want to dissolve into the light of God. And then when they've done that, all over again, the process goes on, and it blows out those mud balls. And here are planets, and here once again, you're a baby, you're a child, the flowers are brilliantly colored, the stars are gorgeous, the smell of the earth, the sound of the rain, everything is marvelous once again. And once again you see the other, the man, the woman that you love, as if it had never happened before. It all starts over again. And as it goes on, it gets more and more intense. All the problems get more and more problematic. And you find you're wrestling with something you can't control. You've got to control it, but you absolutely can't control it, like all the problems of the world at the present time. The whole scene is completely out of hand. And we feel we're going to our doom, because we're going once again towards the birth of a star, which is the most creative thing there is. Now, if you think about this for a while, you see, I put forward 3 fantasies, all of which have a cyclic quality. We reproduce, not only biologically, but we reproduce artistically, technically. Just for a moment, I want to put in an aside about biological reproduction. See, when I think back to my grandfather, whom I knew fairly well, he was, when I was a little boy, he was something extraordinarily impressive. He looked like King Edward VII. He was a very, very elegant man, with a little goatee beard. He didn't have sideburns like this, and he had shorter hair, but he was a very elegant fellow, dressed beautifully. And I thought, you know, he was the very image of God. And now here I am, the same age as he was when I first knew him. And I have 5 grandchildren. And I'm sort of no longer impressed by grandfathers. I know, here I am. I'm one of them too. And this is the same idea, you see, of the round. That we are almost perpetually in the same place, as the French proverb says, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. The more it changes, the more it's the same thing. Well, that means then, you see, that existence, the feeling of being, is a sort of spectrum. Just as light is at one end red and at the other end violet. And you have to have these extremes in order to have color at all, in order to know light. So you see, likewise, we have to have the experience that there is somebody else, something else going on altogether out of our control, in order to have the experience of being me. And so in order to feel good, to feel that well, life is worthwhile, that existence is worth going on with, in order to bring out that feeling, just as the red brings out the violet, there has to be in the back of our minds, maybe very far away, the comprehension that there is something that could happen that absolutely mustn't happen, that is the horrors, that is the screaming mimes at the end of the line. We have to know that's there. And every so often, that has to happen. Because if there isn't the experience that we go through, called the screaming mimes at the end of the line, where everything has gone wrong, like just before he died, the British novelist Arnold Bennett said, "I feel somehow that everything's absolutely wrong." You know? So the possibility, even the imagination that there could be such an experience in the back of our heads, is the background which gives intensity to the sense that we call feeling good, feeling that it's all right. It's all right now, I'm only bleeding. So, if you understand that, you see that really and truly you're always in the same place. Just as every creature thinks it's a human being. And as just every being turns out to be a reproduction by some interesting technology, whether it's electronic or biological, makes very little difference. And just as it may be, I don't know, planets are stars' ways of becoming other stars, and so on, and so on, and so on. But the moral is, you're always in the same place. And what is that place? You can ask yourself very, very, I won't say seriously, because this isn't really serious, it's sincere. Ask yourself very sincerely, if that is so, if, in other words, the place in which you are now is the place where everything and everybody else really is, only there's an arrangement to pretend that you ought to be somewhere else. So the place where you are is the place where you're always pretending you ought to be somewhere else. And this is the nature of life. This is the pulse. I ought to be somewhere else. So it's a kind of a gazum like that, see? When if you discover that that's the trick that you're playing on yourself, you become serene. And you don't entirely give up the game because you've seen through it. But you say, it really might be fun to go on playing.
So here we go. 1905. You should know immediately, one thing should know in your head, 1905. Einstein comes out with this special theory of relativity.
Right.
Okay? In fact, it's not
on fire.
It's not what he called it. It was the paper that delivered it to us is called On the Electrodynamics of Moving Bodies. And no one wanted to recite that, so it was just called special relativity. But that's what it is, because it's all about the relativity of motion and time. Okay? Right. So what it did was codify the fact that spatial dimensions need the three spatial dimensions, height, width, and depth, need a fourth dimension to localize it in any spatial system you're talking about. And since you needed time, then it's a space-time system. So it sounds like it's weird. Like, what are you doing, Einstein? Leave me alone with my height, width, and depth. But it turns out we have always thought about life in four dimensions. Always. And here's an example of why. If I say to you, Chuck, I'll meet you tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock.
I'll say, great, what are we doing? I'm so excited to find out.
Okay.
I love when you surprise me like this.
Well, okay, I can do that, but I'll say, all right, that's fine. I'll meet you at the corner of 5th Avenue and 34th Street.
Okay.
What's your next question to me?
And when? Because I don't want to stay there all day waiting for you.
So you knew that giving you those coordinates, right, Earth's surface, 33rd Street, 5th Avenue, 34th Street, you knew that's insufficient for us to actually meet.
Absolutely.
You're going to say, when? Bada bing! The time coordinate just got slapped on there.
Did you just bada bing space time?
Is that allowed? I did bada bing space time. All right.
That's awesome.
Is that forgivable to you? Yeah, I think.
Yeah.
All right. So, and you can reverse that, right? I can say, Chuck, I'll meet you at 12 noon tomorrow. And,
Okay.
And your next question to me is?
When or where?
I just said when.
Okay, where?
Where, exactly. So we cannot meet unless the spatial coordinate is specified and the temporal coordinate is specified. Oh, and by the way, because we're all kind of stuck on Earth's surface, if you want to do the full up three-dimensional meet in space, I would say I'll meet you at 5th Avenue, 34th Street, 107 floors up. Okay? Or 86 floors up. That would be the Empire State Building, because that's the coordinate of the Empire State Building. So I'd give one dimension, the other dimension, and then a height dimension. Those are all three dimensions. Often, you don't give the height dimension because you're just meeting on the street.
Right.
It's just implicit, yes, we're going to meet on Earth's surface this time.
Right.
That one is an easy one to just accept as a given. But technically, if you wanted all three, if you wanted to do it full up, you give three dimensions. Earth's surface, 34th Street, 5th Avenue, and at a time. So we already knew this, but no one thought about it that way. Now, here are the consequences of that. If you're crossing the street, and then a minute later, a truck drives down the street, you were in the same place as that truck.
Right.
When you were in the middle of the street.
At the right time, though. I was in that same place.
I mean, the right time meaning that's not where the truck is at that time.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, so I don't want to say you were in the same place at the wrong time. You were in the same place at the right time.
Time.
So we are always in the same place as each other, but it doesn't mean anything until you're there at the same time. So I just want to drive home that concept. So now let's go to sci-fi movies. How about Back to the Future, one of the greatest sort of thought through time travel stories there are, including the Terminator. I think thought through time travel very hard.
Well.
They did all right.
Yeah.
I have an issue. Wait, I have an issue with Arnold.
What is it? Tell me now. Why do you have a problem?
So on the first. I'll tell you, dude. He goes back in time to kill the possible parents of
John Connor,
the leader of the new movement of the resistance. But all he had to do is prevent the parents from meeting each other. I mean, you can go back 4 generations earlier and just put 2 people on a different train so they never meet, and that entire genetic lineage never exists, right? So this idea that he's got to kill them and it's going to be all bloody, that made it like a violent movie, but it could have been done a little more with less blood and gore. Where was I? Oh, so here's what you have to be concerned about. Let's go to Back to the Future. When Marty, give me some Doc Brown here.
Marty, it's time.
Now I'm in the mood. Thank you. All right.
Get in the car, Marty.
So there's Marty, and he's being chased by the Libyan terrorists. Okay.
That's right. That's right.
And in the parking lot, in the Twin Pines parking lot. All right. And then he there's a date in there from 1955, and he goes back in time to 1955. Okay, and he lands in the Twin Pines Ranch, because as we know, all good farmland becomes strip malls, right, in modern times. All right, okay. What they didn't address is the fact that he would only land in that ranch if he goes back to when Earth was in the same place in its orbit.
Ooh.
He would have to be traveling on the anniversary of the date that he was of when he left.
Right.
So that Earth is back where it is, so that when he goes back in time, he doesn't end up suffocating in the vacuum of space.
Oh man, that first of all would be the best time travel short film ever. Oh, Marty, I discovered the secrets of time travel, Marty, right? Get in the car. And then the two of them are just floating in space.
The end.
The end. I didn't think this through, Marty.
So you need, so I'm just saying, it's not good enough just to travel back in time. You need something to propel you in space as well. So it's a space-time machine, not just a time machine, because Earth is a moving target. I just want to make that clear.
That's really cool, actually.
And by the way, just so you go back in time, you could still land on Earth, but how was Earth rotated? You could end up in Siberia, in the middle of the ocean, probably, because most of Earth's longitude is spanned by ocean. So I just want to sort of, it's truth in time travel with regard to these space-time coordinates. Now, we call these your coordinate in space and your coordinate in time. We call that your world line.
Really?
Yes,
I've never
it's a
heard
cool
that
term.
before.
World line.
World line.
So your world line is where and when you are.
Nice.
So you can step back and look at everyone's world lines, and the world lines are sort of, think of it as sort of some kind of shadow moving through this hyper coordinate system. And so that way, if I had to go to even a higher dimension, so I can see your entire world line. If I see your entire world line, you are always being born, you're always living out your life, and you're always dying.
Right.
Because I can see the time coordinate.
Timeline. Right.
The whole timeline is there in front of me.
Right.
And I can see other people's world lines intersect your world line. Oh, that's when you met your wife. Okay? That's when you were in my office and we recorded that episode.
Exactly.
So imagine the spaghetti picture of all these world lines of human beings interacting.
This is cool.
And that I don't know that anyone has actually thought to portray that.
No, they have not. That's why I said this is so cool. Because first of all, first I've ever heard of it. But secondly, that is something that nobody's put in sci-fi in terms of. Actually, I take it back. There's a couple Star Trek episodes where they play with that, but they don't present it that way. They still present the linear as portrayed in different positions.
Exactly. So anyhow, so that's how that works. And one last point in Kurt Vonnegut's novel Slaughterhouse-Five, which ostensibly takes place at the end of the Second World War. And there are other sort of historical details I won't get into. What I was most intrigued by is the time travel that goes on in that. And he actually captures that accurately. So what happens is the lead protagonist gets abducted by aliens, gets put in a cage, and that sounds bad, but they said, no, you're still there, you're still being born, you're still dying, and they went outside of his timeline. And so he would sit there and daydream, but by daydreaming, he was living his life, and he could relive his life multiple ways and in multiple times.
Wait, just real quick, because we're running out of time. Dr. Manhattan, I forgot also, is a character who lives in his world line and also sees his world line simultaneously.
Okay, this is of the Dr. Manhattan from the Watchmen.
Watchmen, correct.
Yes, excellent. Yeah, that's a pretty powerful guy.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
once you have him, why have anything, do anything
that's
about
why
anything?
I don't like. That's why I don't like Watchmen, believe it or not, for what you just said. Because it's like, I got Dr. Manhattan. I mean, my answer to everything is like, seriously, bro? I got Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, that's the answer. Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, it's Dr. Manhattan. It's
the whole thing. So now, one other quick thing.
All right.
If you have an ant in a square, okay, and let's say there's a sticky edge on the square, that's basically a prison for the ant. You could tell the ant, just go up an inch and out and over. No, but the ant is stuck in two dimensions. The two dimensions of the paper that's at length and a width, okay, or height or whatever. Those two dimensions, the ant is stuck. If it had access to a third dimension, it could escape the prison, right?
Right. because it can
Right.
find height and escape. Right.
So think about it. If you are in an actual jail cell and you had access to a fourth dimension, a fourth spatial dimension, you just have to step out of the spatial into the spatial dimension and step back in, and then you just walk out of the prison without ever touching the walls. Okay? So that's how you escape prison. Just invent a fourth spatial dimension to do that. So then I thought, if you need a spatial dimension for that, then what about our fourth time dimension? Why can't that work for us the way a fourth spatial dimension? It does. It does. Here it is. You ready?